Hello, and welcome to Day by Day True Crime Stories, the podcast where we explore a different crime or justice milestone from this day in history. I'm your host, Kona Gallagher, and today is September 20th. On this day in 1974, a young police officer in Washington, D.C. responded to what sounded like a routine call near a busy downtown corner. She was 24 years old, had been on the job less than a year, and was working on her own. In just a few minutes, she would be shot and killed by an armed suspect, becoming the first African-American female police officer in the United States to die in the line of duty. This is the story of Officer Gale Cobb, a daughter, a sister, a trailblazer, and ultimately a hero. Let's get started. Gail Adrian Cobb was born August 17, 1950 in Washington, D.C. to Gloria and Frank Cobb. She grew up in a working-class family that valued service and responsibility. Her mother worked as a teacher's aide, and her father was an officer with the D.C. Department of Corrections. Gail's childhood was shaped by watching her father leave the house in uniform each day, heading out to protect the community. She graduated from Eastern High School in 1969. Like many young Black women of her generation, Gail faced limited career paths, but she was determined to do something meaningful. She attended the University of the District of Columbia for a time, but ultimately decided that her future was in public service. In 1973, she applied to join the Metropolitan Police Department. And it was a bold move. Women were still rare in policing, especially in street patrol roles. Nationally, women only made up about 2% of sworn officers at the time, and most were assigned to desk duty, youth services, or admin roles. The idea of a woman patrolling alone was controversial, and many departments resisted it. For Black women, the barriers were even higher. Racial discrimination, both within law enforcement and society at large, meant that very few were accepted into the ranks. Gail Cobb became only the second Black woman ever appointed to the MPD, which was a remarkable achievement. By the fall of 1974, she had been walking her beat for just 9 months. Colleagues described her as disciplined, reliable, and steady. She wasn't the loudest voice in the room, but she was respected. Her brother, Frank Jr., said that Gail was inspired by the idea of helping people and being the kind of figure that she hadn't seen when she was growing up. She knew the risks, but she also knew what it meant to serve. September 20th, 1974 was a clear, warm Friday morning in downtown Washington, D.C., and the city buzzed with its usual weekday activity. Officer Cobb was patrolling near 14th and F Streets Northwest, a corridor filled with office buildings, stores, and parking garages. Just after 9:30 a.m., her radio crackled to life. A suspect had just attempted to rob the American Security and Trust Bank nearby. Witnesses said that the man was armed and had fled on foot, disappearing into an underground parking garage only a block away. Cobb was close by, so she responded immediately. Walking into the garage, she saw a man matching the description. According to later reports, she approached him calmly, identified herself, and told him to put his hands against the wall. She had the presence of mind to begin calling in her location for backup, but she never finished the call. The man she confronted suddenly pulled a revolver. He fired a single shot. That bullet struck Cobb in the wrist, shattering the watch her mother had given her. It tore through her police radio, silencing her call for help, and then it entered her chest, piercing her heart. Officer Gale Cobb collapsed on the concrete floor of the garage. She never had the opportunity to draw her own weapon. By the time medics reached her, she was gone. She was only 24 years old. The shooting stunned the department. Gail had been doing her job by the book. She approached a suspect and she tried to call for backup. Yet, in seconds, she was dead. Officers flooded the area. her killer quickly apprehended and still had the gun. He was charged with murder, and the case moved swiftly through the courts. For the people of Washington, D.C., the loss was deeply personal. The city was still struggling with crime, poverty, and tensions between law enforcement and the communities they served. For women and minority officers, Gale's death was a heartbreaking reminder of how dangerous the job could be. She became the first female officer in the Metropolitan Police Department to die in the line of duty, and the first African-American female police officer in U.S. history to be killed while serving. In the days that followed, Washington mourned. Hundreds attended her funeral. Fellow officers in dress blues, city officials, and residents who had never met her but had been moved by her bravery. Her badge number was retired permanently. President Gerald Ford sent a letter of condolence to her family, praising her courage and service, and the D.C. City Council passed a resolution honoring her life. Later, Gale's name was etched into the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial in Washington, D.C. A street, Gail Cobb Way, was also named in her honor. Gale's brother, Frank Cobb Jr., became a police officer himself. In interviews, he recalled how proud Gale was to wear the badge and how fully she understood the weight of being one of the first Black women in uniform. He said that even when she was tired, she was determined to show up, to prove that women belonged in law enforcement, and to serve her city with dignity. Today, when female officers, especially Black women, lace up their boots and put on their badge, many do so standing in the shadow of trailblazers like Gale. She wasn't famous in life. She didn't seek attention, but by stepping into that uniform, by walking her beat, and by confronting danger without hesitation, she left a mark that endures over 50 years later. Officer Gale Cobb was more than the tragic circumstances of her death. She was a daughter who loved her family, a sister who inspired her brother, and a young woman who chose to serve in the city that didn't always welcome her. And on September 20th, 1974, she became a hero. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of Day by Day True Crime Stories. If you found Officer Cobb's story compelling, please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. It'll help us grow. And be sure to join me again tomorrow as we explore another significant event in true crime history. Until then, stay safe and remember that behind every headline is a life worth remembering. Day by Day True Crime Stories is a Little Monster production.
Hey, you can do it!